Hey there, it's Heather from Sunshine Hunting. I wanted to talk with you guys today about what it means to be a catfish. Um, a catfish is really anybody who creates a personal profile online that's fake. They either steal somebody else's photos, uses their identity in order to build trust and gain personal information on their victims. That's really all it is. We know it in pop culture because of movies and accounts of other people having this happen to them. But this goes on more often than most of us are really aware of. They commonly find people on dating sites, and in 2021, it ran rampant because of lockdown due to COVID, due to people not being able to intermingle with each other for safety reasons, and they became very, very alone. And so people were online and they were chatting with people, and they were capable of having a heyday. Now, if you've ever been a victim of a scam, you feel immediately stupid. You feel gullible, you feel naive, and you feel like this person or these people, they're just laughing at you. And you feel victimized. Part of it, you don't understand the reason why they would pick you, but really, they just picked you because you were there. Most of the time. Sometimes it's about revenge. Sometimes. But not always. Sometimes it was just a person of opportunity. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the fact that in 2021, the FBI reported 24,000 cases of catfishing. 24,000 cases, and that was in 2021. Now my question is I had a really hard time telling people that I was a victim of a catfish. First of all, I had a really hard time even believing that this person was a catfish, and I'll explain the reason why. Because I had probably somebody that had a bulletproof profile. And the fact that people immediately just jumped to a conclusion that this person was a catfish because of what his profession was, and the fact that he didn't immediately show up for me in my life, made me so frustrated, because I immediately took offense to the fact that they thought that I wasn't deserving of having a great guy in my life. And I felt attacked by that. I don't know about you, but I always do better with a little change of venue, trying to liven up a little bit, especially in a long talk, and especially when it's an important piece of information. So that's what I'm doing. We've changed the venue. It's a different day because I want to draw your attention to something very important. Well, I don't know about you, but I was stuck on this thing about why I felt so attacked, about people making this immediate assumption. And it was pretty right out of the gate, like right when I started talking to my catfish, that he wasn't real, that he was too good to be true, and that was the reason why. It wasn't like, 6 months in or a few months in. It was like pretty right away. Like I met him on a dating site, and immediately the first time he had a problem showing up, it was immediately catfish. And mind you, it was in the middle of COVID. Now it sounds like I'm defending him, but it was in the middle of COVID. They had just opened up people flying. He was a pilot. He was a charter pilot. and he had flown somebody over there, and the whole thing was is that he had gotten sick, so he wasn't able to fly home. And then he, of course, because of US sanctions in place, he had to wait 14 days in quarantine because the symptoms seemed very similar to COVID, vomiting, diarrhea, those things, right? GI issues. And that was the reason why. So we had to wait 14 days in quarantine, and then I guess he had to get a booster shot, and that was the whole point. The problem was is that that's when he racked up a hotel bill when he didn't have the funds to pay for it. And I guess because the person that was supposed to be paying him for the charter flight ended up giving him the bounce check that he deposited into my bank account because he was locked out of his bank account. So yeah, the story seems a little bit convoluted, but I didn't tell them any of that information, right? I just said that he wasn't able to show up because of him being sick with COVID. So as far as they knew at that point and maybe it was their instincts, but as far as they knew at that point is that I was talking to this person and then he didn't show up. So I felt very attacked because why? Because, well, at this point, I feel that people think that I have such a poor case of judgment due to my past history of men, whoever I chose to be in a relationship with. Well, they could arguably say that, but I didn't choose to be treated like crap. I didn't choose to sign. I mean, it wasn't like I wanted to be treated like, I didn't choose that, right? Like that was a result of somebody else's actions towards me. And over time, I signed up for a marriage where I thought the person wasn't like that. Like I didn't know they were the way they were. I had no control over the fact that the person was the way they were and they were non-productive and they didn't want to show up and that they were manipulative. I didn't know. It's almost like somebody trying to judge my ability to decipher between somebody being a master manipulator and a con man versus somebody that's being honest and truthful. Like I'm married to this individual. They said they wanted to marry me. Thought they wanted to show up and be my husband. Like, how am I supposed to know this person is non-productive? How am I supposed to know that this person is never going to show up for me? At that point, after 18 years, you get so devalued as a human being that it's easy to just expect to get scraps. Like I wasn't asking for a lot from a human being to show up for me. Now I am. But like at the time, I was just wanting the person to just be a productive husband. Like the bare bones. But at this point, I was so devalued and felt so worthless as a human being. And so how can you not translate that as a person saying, well, your worth is so low and at such a bottom level that you don't deserve to have some great guy that's successful, that has his stuff together, that is capable of providing you a great life where you get to travel, where you get to experience beautiful things, where your priorities are in alignment. And the crazy thing is that I was showing up like that. So I deserved that person in my life because that's how I was showing up for this other person. So I deserved that person. And so it was such an insult to me because it's like they completely didn't see who I was. They just saw surface level BS because I was struggling. I was struggling emotionally because of the abuse. And it was all judgment. And that's why I felt attacked. And I had people telling me who I was supposed to be friends with. I had people telling me, like, you're going to tell me who I'm going to be friends with. You're going to tell me who I'm supposed to have a relationship with. Are you kidding me? I'm a grown adult woman. No one's going to tell me who I'm going to talk to, and no one's going to tell me who I'm going to have a relationship with. Sorry. I'm not a child. And that's where people need to step off. That's where people needed to back up. And I blame myself for that, because you know what? I was offering too much information to friends. So it made them feel better if I was at arm's length, as opposed to possibly getting somebody that was successful, as opposed to possibly getting somebody that was capable of being a wonderful companion, whether he was or not. Because that wonderful person is out there, right? For all of us. That great compatible person is there for each of us. We just have to stop settling for BS. And that's why I felt so attacked. Who wouldn't? How did we end up being manipulated by these people? And we ended up getting manipulated for probably what I would think, I mean, at least I believe that I did, out of being afraid to be alone. Because we play this story in our mind, this movie about what we think being alone might be like. And this horrific idea or this nightmare of what it might be like, or what we might end up becoming alone. And I mean, if we'll just use my case as an example, because why not? I'm here and I'm willing and able victim, no pun intended. I am a 46-year-old woman living in her parents' basement now with 10 cats, single. You know, it sounds owing a lot of money to a lot of people and not able to find a job, recovering from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Could it get any worse? Could it seem like it could get any worse? Not really. I mean, it sounds pretty bad, right? It does. It sounds pretty bad. But it gets to this point where you start to realize that that's just a story that you're telling yourself. That's just the video that you're playing. And that's a reality that somebody else might be saying. Because I choose to say that I get an opportunity to spend time with my parents that I haven't had in over 30 years of my life, which is a blessing. And not only my parents, but my grandma. And that's a gift. And I choose to have, to look at it like the fact that I get to pursue stuff that I haven't been able to pursue because I was overburdened by so many other people's problems that they wanted to hand me. And I get to work myself into having a clean slate and rid myself of taking care of like all these belongings that I didn't even want anymore, and let them go. And let go of the people in my life that don't need to be there because they didn't have my best intentions in mind, and embrace the people that did. I choose to look at it as a time to heal. And I found more by turning the love within myself, back to myself, that I was over giving to all these other people. I found so much more enjoyment and fulfillment and love that I feel secure and solid. And I'm not saying that there's not days that, I get upset, and there's not days that I feel down, and that there's not days that it's super duper hard for me and I get frustrated, because there are. I mean, clearly you can see that in the videos. There are, because that's just being human. But I'm not afraid anymore of being alone, because I realized that the whole time, all those decades, I was always alone. There was nobody showing up for me. It just was a person that was pretending to be there. that was, in essence, a catfish pretending to be in my life, pretending to show up for me, but they weren't really there. And so it's all about perspective. It's all about whether this person is a catfish online or whether this person is actually really here. It's about whether they're really truly wanting to show up as a teammate, as a productive partner, and they didn't. And I was left carrying everything by myself. And so if that's the case, then it's easier for me to carry that burden alone on my own than sit there in resentment and anger and frustration, trying to drag somebody along with me, kicking and screaming and fighting and blocking every single attempt that I make to move forward in my life by getting in the way and causing problems. You see, it's all about perspective. It's all about how you look at it. And I have faith in knowing that when the right person is meant to be in my life, they're going to come. And if I'm meant to spend my life completely alone, then I'd rather be alone than entertain people like I had been spending time with in the past that were just causing so much grief. And when you get to that place, then you truly have power to dictate who you want to be in your life and who you want out of your life. And that's the place that we all need to be. And that's that fear and that feelings of desperation or just wanting somebody to love us, just wanting somebody to care about us is and to show up for us is why I started my daily lives, right? It's because I want people to have that feeling of like somebody, you matter to somebody, you know? And that $1 billion that we as American people spent in those reported 24,000 cases of romance scams during COVID, like, makes me feel so happy. I'm like getting emotional now because it makes me feel so happy. One, because I know there's other people like me out there. And two, there's so many people with such good hearts in America, like that they wanted to help somebody else. And majority of us were out of work, but we could see so much pain and suffering and happening all over the world, and we just wanted to be loved and matter to somebody. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's absolutely beautiful. And if nothing else, hold that in your heart to know that you were a good person. What your intention was. And have faith that you can find a way out of any financial burdens that you might be carrying. And trust that there's somebody out there for you to take all that love. And if it's not, it's you, you know, take that time to heal and love yourself, and then trust that God's gonna send you somebody, or, you know, whatever you believe in, but like that person's coming,
because you deserve it. You deserve that person because what you did was beautiful. And don't be mad, just forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for not treating yourself better. And start treating yourself amazing now, you know? Find ways to be better. And I'm going to help show you that. Because you don't deserve anything less than that. Anyway, I apologize for getting super emotional, but it's the romantic in me. I'm a poet, what can I say? Anyway, we're gonna go to the reasons why somebody would catfish. Moving on.
So the real question is why? Why would some person want to create an online persona, take somebody else's image, and pretend that there's somebody else online or on a dating profile that ends up, as a result, either you know, manipulating you out of funds, but at the same time, it's not just about manipulating you out of money, it's also hurting you emotionally, hurting you financially, but causing a lot of times, like in my case, already I was hurting. I was already suffering from emotional abuse, and it thus created more significant emotional damage. So the question is why? Why would somebody do that? Why are people out there doing these harmful behaviors repeatedly over and over again and not getting caught because people can't track them down, because the police department and the FBI are inundated with cyber crimes? Why? Why is this happening? And how can we prevent ourselves from having other people getting victimized, including ourselves? Because I certainly feel like I have been repeatedly victimized over and over and over again by either the same individual or multiple individuals, or they sold my name out to like the Catfish catalog of gullible people. So the question is how do you stop this? Like, how can we stop this? Because I truly believe that this is not just like, I'm trying to look at, like, zoom out and look at it not only as like they hurt me and I'm upset, but by forgiving them, because I'm not going to allow these people to have control over me, but like zooming out and being like, these people are sick. Like, there's something mentally wrong with them and they need help too. So whatever that problem is, we have to also recognize that this is an illness as well, that needs to be addressed. And in order to do that, we need to look at the reason why. Why are these people doing this? And so that's what we're going to do. There's 7 reasons that, from my research, that I came up with. So here we go. So the first one is poor self-esteem. Now, that seems almost like an obvious thing, right? They grab a picture offline that is someone that's an attractive male. I even believe my catfish was actually a real person that they used. And they just, it's a common thing now, I think, where because of profiles and people checking profiles and to see the history and us having awareness now, that they actually just grab photos of other people's profiles and then set them up on dating sites. So, and that's what I think, is that this person actually, my catfish was actually a real person, but I was not really talking to the real person. I was talking to a fictional fantasy person that they had created. And so, so they do this. So they find an attractive person with a good job that's successful, and wealthy, is living some sort of lavish lifestyle that they probably are not, and would be, some sort of dream lifestyle that they wish they had, right? And so the point is that it's a fantasy. It's a fantasy lifestyle of the kind of person that they wish they were. And that's their persona. And that's what they are trying to sell, right? I remember there was one, which I'll say for some of my little Catfish Chronicle episodes, but there was, and you'll have to look for it, but there was one where there was a Italian sailor on a boat that was clearly an African male, was not Italian, and there's just so that, like, sometimes their accents don't match, that kind of a thing. So poor self-esteem is number one. The second one is mental illness. And this came apparently clear to me when there's like this cycle that you kind of go through when you are being catfish, where they're around and they're really present and they're happy and they want to be in your life, and they want something from you, and then once they get something from you, then they discard you. And it made me realize that it was very similar to the narcissistic emotional abuse that I was suffering from before. And so I realized that parallel. And so I always questioned whether if this is the same person as the person that was abusing me. And still to this day, or the people that had abused me in the past. And still to this day, I wonder, like if it was a group of people that had teamed up and they worked together, but that's also part of the paranoia of having complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is there's paranoia involved, right? So it works to their benefit. So you never really know. And then when there's nobody there to help investigate, because there's so many crimes, nobody's being held accountable, right? We'll get into it later on in another video of how do you move beyond this as a person trying to recover from this complex post-traumatic stress disorder. With that being said, I couldn't help but see the parallels that were happening, right? So here I'm suspecting that this person's not real. I'm, well over an extended period of time. We're talking about like a year in, when this person's not showing up repeatedly, like, 2-3 times. There was always something coming in and blocking it. And not understanding why, and then putting all these burdens on me, and then being combative when I was trying to establish boundaries for myself, to have my own healing, and the guilt and the manipulation. It was very narcissistic. And so, and clearly looked like some sort of mental illness was taking place. And and depression and anxiety. And of course, any person, especially a woman, and I think that's part of the reason, but I'm not going to say that they don't go after men, because I believe that there's a healthy group of people that go after men too, because I'm not going to be one of those people that's going to say that men don't have a nurturing instinct as well, because they do. And they obviously I think we all want to have a person and somebody that we care about, right? So in our lives. But there is this, already kind of built-in nurturing thing that women have, right? And you want to care for something. You want to be, you'd be weird to be like, it would seem awkward to be like, well, what's going on? Like, if you don't say those things, you have to learn to really sit on your hands when you're trying to detach yourself, like, from that kind of person in your life, because they are going to manipulate you and come after you with every channel possible. And that's what people don't understand. Especially if it's a narcissistic individual that's doing this to you. And that brings us to the third one. So the third one is revenge. So people might catfish another person for the simple act of trying to get revenge on them online. So they would pretend that they're a different person, take on an online persona, because they want to make them look foolish, to steal their identity, to get some sort of an upper hand. Some other means. Either you were an ex-boss, an ex-lover, an ex-spouse. There's some reason why they feel that you wronged them and that they have the right. This is where the narcissism comes, right? They have the right to make you and have access to your personal life, to stalk you online and commit cyber crimes on you. And because there is nothing that anybody can really do, because yet again, I'm going to state it all over again, the government systems are so overdrained with crimes like these, they don't have the time or the manpower to investigate. So it becomes a living nightmare. And in my case, when I was being verbally harassed online and was told that by the judge, when I was attempting to get a restraining order, because I was also being verbally harassed by my spouse, at the time is now my ex-spouse, at my place of employment, and was causing such anxiety that created me to have to go on a leave of absence from my job that turned into over a year, and then resulted in me losing my job due to complex post-traumatic stress disorder. When I had that happen to me and I filed those restraining order paperwork with the Supreme Court, Family Law, a Supreme Court of Los Angeles, the judge told me that it is freedom of speech to defamate somebody's character online. And he didn't think that I was being emotionally abused. So devastated and feeling completely unvalued as a human being, feeling completely like I didn't matter, that I was unprotected, and my life didn't hold a purpose or a meaning, and I was just meant to work and bring in a paycheck, and basically not have any enjoyment and suffer now because I wanted to find some sort of joy and happiness in my life. That was not allowed, right? I'm just supposed to sit here and be treated like crap for the rest of my life by this individual, even though he warned him not to do that. It makes me wonder and question who's really doing this repeatedly to me at this juncture in time. I don't know. If it's not him, it's somebody he knows. It's probably the question. You know, when you have your intuition is really strong and you don't really have anything that anybody could obtain. There's no finances now. There's nothing. If you guys hear that, that's my old senior kitty. He's fine. He's just talking. The fourth reason is harassment. And this came very prevalent when I tried to disengage and cut off contact with my catfish, Jeff. And also it would happen like if there was a disconnection on his part. where like there would be periods of time where he would just go completely missing in action for whatever the reason was, right? In the course of the over a year that I was talking to this person, waiting for them to show up in my life, due to one excuse after another. So I had to go back and retape this section. So my apologies, because I was seated and now I'm standing, but it makes it more exciting. So yeah, so anytime we, disconnected in contact, right? Like one of the times he just went completely missing in action for 3 weeks and just stopped talking to me and didn't tell me the reason why. And still to this day, he wouldn't tell me the reason why. My guess is that he was keeping his options open and was dating somebody else. And that lasted 3 weeks, and then they left and were no longer on vacation wherever he was, right? The other thing, or it ran its course, and I was assuming that we were in a significant relationship, right? And we were working on getting him home. The other moment was when, or the first moment was when he was supposed to come back initially on December 11th. And he didn't show, and he said that was because of the flying. You know, he took the entire day to contact me, because he said he was sick. Then it took him an entire week to contact me, when he had the diagnosis of actually coming down with COVID, when he was supposed to come back. And then there was another point where I had transferred him money, and I was on the verge of moving back home, which I ended up doing. And I transferred him plane ticket money, and he never showed up. And then he disappeared for 3 weeks, and that was devastating. And that's in one of the videos that I have. I have actual footage of me at the airport, and at home again, completely in tears and upset, because he ghosted me. And but in every single circumstance, and I have to say, it was so devastating just to get that phone message of like a busy signal and not being able to get a hold of somebody, and that fear of like initially, because you're thinking that this person cares about you, and you of course love them, and you care about them, and you think that the person, something happened to them, and how could you not? And that fear, and not being able to get a hold of them, and not being able to get in touch with them, was devastating, and created so much turmoil. And this in and out, hot and cold thing would drives you so insane, right? And it's this game, like this cat and mouse game, that I have learned is become like, if somebody does that to me now, I immediately disconnect. Like I immediately go, okay, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Like that's a huge, huge, huge red flag, because to me, it's all it is game playing. You don't want to have you don't want to have a serious relationship if you're just going to be in and out, in and out, in and out. If you want to be something serious, then you would show up and act serious. And because I've been hurt too many times, and I don't have time to waste time with frivolous people that aren't serious, So, I've been promised like everything, under the sun, and they would always say these things like, my word is my bond, and don't you trust me? That was like that's like a big, big, big thing, and even in real life, men in flesh would always be like, oh, believe me, trust me, all this lip service. And as far as I'm concerned, people can say whatever, even not even just men, women too, bosses in the past, you can say whatever you want to say to me, but unless your actions show me and deliver, I don't give a rat's ass. I don't. Because it doesn't mean anything. It's just a bunch of words coming out of your mouth. And I hate to be like that, but that's basically what people have done to me. I don't want to be cold and calculated, but people can talk a good game and talk. But unless they follow through, I don't have time. I'm not going to take you serious. And the same thing goes with dating. The same thing. So everybody gets put into one box, and they only get taken out of that box and put into the serious box if they can follow through with being serious and an action, like actually do an action that you say you're going to do, So, and that's what you have to start to do. You have to start building boundaries and rules in order to protect yourself from these people. And that being said, and the reason why was because when I tried to completely disconnect from him, and that was because at this point, there was some long story about how, he had been in the country for too long, which is legitimate. Like, that's really a thing when you're overstaying a country. And I had warned him on this, but he, of course, one ear out the other. I don't know what I'm talking about. And he didn't file the paperwork, and customs caught him at the airport was the reason why so they wouldn't let him pass through. So he had to come up with all this money. So he was living homeless basically on the streets of Dubai. And there's a great story. I don't know if it's in one of the tapes yet, that he gets so mad at me because I tell him legitimately how to survive on the streets of Dubai. Like, I'm like, go to a bakery, go to a grocery store. They throw out like old food that's like expired, but like a boxed food, that's expired. That's still edible, And I'm like being a survivalist. Like, I'm giving him like legitimate ways to survive. And I'm like, find shelter because it's super hot there, and like, I'm like, all these different ways, clean yourself up. And like, American tourists are known for not learning the language, so if I go to Arabic, so go to, because he was there for so long, he had picked it up, some of it. So I'm like, well, go to a tourist site and offer to be an American guide, like all this stuff, right? I was giving him all these ideas. And of course he was getting more and more mad at me because of his pride. And was like, oh, and saying things like, oh, you want me to eat out of the trash can, and it was just ridiculous when you when you think about it, because I really was trying to help. I was told him to go to church, go to a shelter, whatever, and he just wanted money. That's what he wanted, but I didn't have any money to give him because he took it all. So. I mean, I don't know what this person wanted. You took all the money I had. I had to borrow money from my parents to come home, to pack up the 10 cats that I have and to come home. So then I happened to get him money together, and I sent him yet again money for to the customs agent to fix the paperwork so he can get on a plane. And he's all lovey-dovey, you know how they are. And so excited to see me. And then he just disappears for another 3 weeks. Well, in that 3 weeks, I have somebody contacting me about how some voodoo guy or something, how I have dark spirits and that I am evil entities. Well, yeah, I'm surrounded by, I don't personally have them in me. These people are the dark spirits and the evil entities that are surrounding me, that are taking advantage of me. That's what is going on. Whoever these people are that are trying to manipulate me, that's what these people are seeing. The people that are doing this to me. But I'm not going to buy into that. There's nothing wrong with me. But they're trying to make it out like there's something wrong with me, but it's them that they're talking about. Right? You follow me? The thought that these idiots, and I'm going to call them what they are, they're idiots, would do something like that. They're so uneducated on the fact that
what somebody has to go through when they're trying to recover from post-traumatic stress disorder, not to mention complex post-traumatic stress disorder, that these people would come to an individual and say that they were surrounded by dark spirits and that they needed to be cleansed. I could actually feel God and angels all around me. Because what I did is I asked for their presence to be around me because I was in so much pain. I was in such suffering because of what these people had done to me. So I knew what these people were saying was they were evil. They were the ones that were surrounded by dark energies. So I'm getting so frustrated. So I start sending the stuff to the police department, and then I get and telling them to leave me alone, and I start blocking them, and then they open up additional additional accounts. They just keep bugging me. And then and so it's like harassment. It literally is harassment. And then I get the death threats to me and my family, if that wasn't enough, So then, and mind you, I'm going to remind you guys, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder already. I've had it. So like now we're going to add to it. So now we're getting death threats. And so I'm afraid to leave my home. I'm afraid for my cats. I'm afraid about everything. I'm living in a state of fear. And yeah, that's what they wanted. Terror and fear. That was their objective. And finally one day I was in a full PTSD crisis. I was desperate to get into a psychiatrist. I finally got in, and I finally got medication, and it was so much better. And it got me enough clarity to end this, because they were also by that point he was done with his forgery trial in France, where he was left at, and he shows back up again, in the middle of November. And he serves trials, so then he's coming back in the beginning of December, and then he owes $15,000 bail, and is expected, because he says he's going to be my husband. He says he's my husband. He's not my husband, right? He just kept saying he was my husband. He's my husband. He's my husband. And I'm like, well, I don't got no ring, and I've never even met you. And then he's trying to set up this whole thing about how I'm supposed to be paying his bail. And I don't have money to do that. And then I get a check in the mail. And I'm thinking it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. And I try to disconnect, and then that's when the extortion and how they were going to post everything all over social media. And I just got to the point where I was done. I was like, do whatever you want to do. You want to post naked pictures of me all over social media? Go right ahead. You want to try to strong arm money out of me that I don't have? You're trying to suck blood from a terminate. I don't got it. Go right ahead. I don't have anything. So these people aren't going to be satisfied until I have nothing left. So I don't have anything left. All I have is my voice. And I've made, I don't know how many attempts with law enforcement to do something about it, and they won't do anything. They can't do anything. They're just stop engaging. Well, I have stopped engaging, but it doesn't stop them from coming back more, opening up a different account, trying to do stuff online, and I just keep blocking them and blocking them and blocking them. And, it's like, it gets to the point where it's harassment. It's absolute harassment. And you begin to wonder why these people are so obsessed with you and wanting your attention. But it has to be some sort of mental illness. It has to fall under that category, because otherwise I don't know what sane human, and I'm healing. I've obviously got problems, right? I'm being very open about them, but I'm doing my best to heal from them. And I can sit here and say to you that these people have mental problems. And I'm not a licensed therapist or psychiatrist by any means. So I just I'm using myself as an example so people can understand
to stop beating themselves up, to stop and have compassion for yourself. That if you're going through something like this, which clearly there's a lot of us that have gone through this, that there's nothing wrong with you other than having a giant heart, and you just need to start loving yourself more. That's it. The next one is to conceal their identity. That's the other reason why people do that. They want to conceal their identity because they don't want you to know who they were. This is also very funny because that's why they use fake pictures and things like that. Often, that's the reason why they tell you that you need to, in a long distance situation, you need to have them on a video chat immediately. And Jeff, the catfish, his answer was that his phone was stolen and he didn't have a phone that was capable of doing that. There's always some reason why he can't or he couldn't show up online. The best was, and I think the thing that sealed the deal of the reason why I decided to cut off ties was when he was, which I'll probably talk about, was I was supposed to, he wanted me to help him pay for his forgery bail. And if I paid like $1,250 towards that bail, or then he would be able to see me on a video chat. Yeah, how convenient. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I don't have it. Sorry, I don't have the money. Sorry. I trivialize it, but it was not now. But I mean, I would be lying to say that it wasn't a hard thing for me to let that go. It was because, of course, as a human being, you don't want to believe that somebody's been completely lying to you like that. And then even worse, knowing that potentially it could be somebody that at one point you cared about. At one point could have been potentially, somebody that you were married to, maybe, or somebody that you worked with, or somebody that just for some reason hated you for no reason, just because you were you. That's even more frightening to think about. It's actually better if it's just some random person online that wants to stalk you. But needless to say, let's move on to the next one. So, financial gain, obviously, would be the sixth one. That's what everybody kind of goes to, right? Financial gain. And this is where I found it to be very interesting, because when I met my catfish, I was putting my life back together after being taken advantage of by a friend, and arguably being taken advantage of by my husband, that's now my ex. And I was trying to have a new beginning, and I was trying to rebuild. And he said that he had an issue with his bank account and that he didn't have access to it. And that's when he proceeded to deposit fraudulent checks into my bank account that were then obviously caught in time. But it seemed like the main ploy was trying to get me in trouble for bank fraud or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like for it to look like I was doing it. And it was weird. The whole thing was it was weird and unusual. It was almost like he knew the way. It was like the way that they were going about it. My cat's trying to go after something. The way they were going about it, he's trying to go after a squirrel that's over here. The way they were attempting, or the way he was attempting to commit fraud, was almost like was absurd. Like, it was obviously going to be detected by the bank, it didn't make any sense. And it wasn't, and then of course he played stupid because it's what these people do, and then they pull on your heartstrings, and you know, it's just a nightmare, just a nightmare experience. And of course I justified it because in my head I had thought that here's this person in a desperate situation doing a desperate thing to get out. You know, what would you do if you were stranded in a foreign country and you didn't have anybody that you knew and you were trying to get out of there? And it just so happened to be a foreign country that, you know, was not exactly American friendly. Let's put it that way, you know? So, and you owed a lot of money to a hotel, you know? That was just collecting every day, adding up every day. And there was an urgency to it. Like it was like a ticking time bomb. So yeah, I got it. Like I understood, and it made sense. And then the COVID thing and all those things were adding into the urgency of it. And of course he pulled on my heartstrings. The last one I'm going to talk about is to experiment with sexuality. So a lot of people will set up fake profiles to experiment with the same sex. So whether it's girl and girl or guy and guy, that they don't feel comfortable with outing themselves in public. Now, I could understand how that would be a very difficult thing for somebody, especially if, you know, they're in a social environment that's not accepting or open to that lifestyle, especially globally. And it makes sense. But at the same time, it's very selfish, because what you're doing is you're putting on this facade that you're somebody different than you are, and you're not really thinking about how it's affecting the other person, and how much you're hurting the other person. Because if they're not the same way, it could be devastating. It could be absolutely devastating. Not only to yourself, but to the person that's experiencing it. And so I found that to be very selfish. But the whole act of being a catfish is very selfish. It's very self-centered. And that's what brings me back again to that whole narcissistic behavior, or borderline personality disorder thing. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist or a therapist, but you can't help but miss those alarming entities that fall in alignment with, on both sides of the spectrum, the person that's having the victimization done to them and the people that are actually committing the crime, right? Or the deception. You can't help but see the warning signs of the mental abuse and the mental dysregulation or the mental illness, really, and how much people that have this happen to them or people that are doing this need to have mental health care. And that is very, very, very important. And if you've gone through this, I highly suggest that you seek out some frame of mental health support, and join my online community for just, if especially because I understand that, you know, a lot of you guys are probably dealing with financial issues, but you don't have to, you know, you can be as present as you want to be, meaning vocally and talkative. I post those lives daily. You don't have to be there on the live. You can just be present when it's available to you, and show up. And it's a peaceful environment where there's no religion, there's nothing. Judgment is what I'm trying to keep it. So there's no, there's nothing, no government, nothing like that in place. And it's just about being a few moments of love and support and care. Because I know that a lot of those support groups ended because of COVID. And the other thing is that a lot of times we can't pay for them because we're struggling financially. Or there might be a lapse in you getting care. And so it's a great way to check in. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, but I'm a kind person that cares about humanity and other people's well-being. And I can't offer you financial support, but what I can do is I can offer you a loving heart and understanding that I've been there too. So thanks for listening, and thank you for staying to the end of this video. I know it was a very long one. I appreciate it. All the best. Bye.